So we identified, obviously, the GBS sector, and we assigned 1,000 seats during this next phase for young people who would like to work in that industry. So we are looking at people who are university graduates, or at least about to graduate, and we plan on training them for 12 months. At least we put them on the program for 12 months, and then depending on how urgent, how quickly they need to gain these skills, then the intensity of the training will vary, right? If it's someone who knows, if we know that, for example, in 6 months we need to have 500 people ready, we can adjust that as we go. But at least they have these licenses, these premium licenses, that's what we call them, intensive licenses, to really help prepare them for any potential investors that might come into the country.
So let me get you straight. This is already fully funded.
It's fully funded by the Mastercard Foundation.
You're already doing this, no matter who ends up taking these people.
Yes, the way that our training works is, yes, we provide like foundational, like English proficiency, but we can also add on to that. And we have a wide array of industry English and business English that is mandatory, but is available on the program for learners to take if they wish to, but we can also make sure that everyone who comes into the program for this specific purpose has now all these different additional courses that they must take, and they are mandatory to them. But for that we need to understand exactly what kind of skills are required. We need to understand as well what kind of training do you want these people to undergo? If someone is at a B1 level, do you want them at a B2, or do you want them at a B2 of the current, of their way to express themselves, or do you want us to also work on their accent reduction?
Welcome to Melia Cred Conversations with Elvis. I'm Elvis Melia, and at Melia Cred we provide consultancy and research for economic development. And in these conversations, I hope to explore the question of whether or not the internet is helping young people from the Global South in general and from Sub-Saharan Africa in particular find work in the digital realm, find work online in one way or another that helps them grow careers, meaningful work, decent work that helps people fulfill their dreams and people work in areas that were hitherto maybe closed off or didn't exist. Some of that debate is no doubt hype, but some of it is surely real and some of it is growing as we speak. That's what I want this podcast to be about, to explore these new different avenues in work in the digital realm for young people in the Global South. And currently, I'm in a set of conversations that took place in Kigali, Rwanda. Today's conversation is with Oriane Ruzibiza of Education First. And Education First is mostly engaged in language training so far for the tourism sector in Rwanda, but globally it's a very interesting company for the global business services sector. And in Rwanda, it's becoming a very interesting company. And this is one of my conversations in which I'm trying to illuminate a little bit the ecosystem around the global business services sector in Kigali. We've had our last conversation with Joseph Semafara, who provides training more on the technical side, and this conversation gives the soft skills counterpart to Joseph's tech skills. So with that, I hope you enjoyed the conversation with Oriane as much as I did. Here is Oriane Ruzibiza.
Yes.
Oriane, thanks for doing this.
Thank you so much for having me. Looking forward to this. I've never been on a podcast before, so this is fantastic.
Yeah, it's a small one, so it's fine. It's a good podcast to start out with.
Yeah.
So we're just getting started ourselves. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. So we met at the conference. Oh, we met in November.
We met. Was it November?
Yes.
Yes, last year.
We had our smaller conference where we initially got things rolling for the BPO sector, GBS, Global Business Services sector.
Yes.
We met there.
Yeah.
And back then you told me that you wouldn't be able to make it for the March conference.
Yes.
And I wondered at the time why you could be so precise, why you would know already so
Yes.
far in advance. But
I was on maternity leave, yes, so I knew.
so you knew.
I knew already because I was due to have my baby in January.
Right.
So I wouldn't be back.
You knew that, yeah.
In March. Yeah.
Yeah.
But my colleagues did attend, right?
Yes, Julia was there. Yeah. So you are EF, Education First.
Yes.
Everybody should know who that is. That's the world's largest.
Privately held education organization in the world. Yeah.
You're in
We are in 122 countries.
122
Yeah,
countries.
Rwanda is the latest, and we are over 55,000 employees.
55,000.
Yeah, and half of them are teachers.
Half of your 55,000
Yes.
employees are teachers. And
Yes.
what do you teach? What is the focus?
We focus on language training and executive education, corporate education. Yes.
So for us, language training is so interesting because the first question that these global business services companies ask us, how many people, what's the labor pool like? How many people can you provide that have B2 level English?
Yes.
Right? And of course, different countries in Africa have different strengths, right? Rwanda's strength is the ease of doing business, the
Yes.
governance, right? But it's a tiny place. And the human capital, right? The labor force. Can we scale up the labor force at that level? Do we have enough people who, A, have the skills and who are willing to work at that price point, right?
Yes.
Global business services, business process outsourcing is a sector with low entry barriers, right? For exactly the demographics that you need in Africa,
Yes.
right? You need, young people, get them placed the first 2 years of their career
Yes.
and get them in there.
Yes.
But they need to be able to communicate, right? They need
Absolutely.
to be able to speak English. So that's
Yes.
why I think you guys are such a cornerstone of this ecosystem.
Yes, I was saying that's the reason why EF is here, because when it comes to English proficiency, Rwanda, like our story is not very straightforward. It's not a straight line. Historically, we've had different languages as medium of instruction. We had French, then we had English, and then depending on where you're studying, even in primary school, we also had Kinyarwanda. So the outcome here is that we often find that our young people, even those who have graduated high school and university, do not have the level of proficiency that they should have at the level of education they're at, right? Especially if you're speaking about English. So the program that we are running right now is in tourism and hospitality. Granted, it's probably not the same level of education that is required to work in a tourism institution that is working for a BPO company. But still, the level there, the proficiency level there was not, it wasn't aligned, basically. And we were brought in to help kind of like fill that gap. And I think that issue is kind of like across the board. Talking about a specific sector that we are, that is of interest to us here, we do believe that our young people have a great array of skills, and that issue of language proficiency should not block these investors from coming to Rwanda and providing employment for all these young people. So we've done BPO training in different countries as EF, and we've done it. I think in India, we've done in other countries in Asia. I'll probably get you the information later, but for I believe Nokia. I believe it was for Nokia and other companies. I'll get you all the details later, but it's something that we are very familiar with. And we go to the extent of not only building their proficiency, but we also add some components of, let's say, accent reduction and whatever it is that the client needs at the end of the day. And the interesting thing about our training, because it's an online training, because it's very flexible and it's easier for most people to be able to attend and complete it. Initially there was a lot of doubts when we first came, but it was also COVID. So at that point, the only way to upskill people was going to have to be done remotely. So the results have been quite surprising when it comes to online training, because we assume that the majority of people outside of Kigali, outside of a certain income level, would not be comfortable, not be comfortable studying on a smartphone. But what we found was that, and also depending on the digital literacy, So what we found was that most people actually, the kind of program that we have, our school is very, very straightforward. It doesn't require high levels of digital literacy to navigate. And when that issue, even the lowest level of literacy was not there, what we've learned was that we need to be able to provide that support. We need to be able to help people in person navigate the school. So we've kind of had to create this blended solution where all the content, all the training happens online, but the support can sometimes happen in person, or it can happen over the phone, because we understand that a solution like this one, it takes sometimes getting used to. So that's just for the tourism and hospitality program that we've done. But when we're thinking about who do we bring into the program now to then work for the BPO sectors, because as I was telling Joseph earlier, we are now in the third phase of our project, the project that we're doing for the Skills Office and with the MasterCard Foundation to train people.
Skills Office of the Rwanda Development Board.
Skills Office of the Rwanda Development Board and the MasterCard Foundation to train 30,000 young people for the tourism and hospitality industry. We've realized that there is also some urgency to look at other industries that are potentially very interesting for investors. So we identified, obviously, the GBS sector, and we assigned 1,000 seats during this next phase for young people who would like to work in that industry. So we are looking at people who are university graduates, or at least about to graduate, and we plan on training them for 12 months. At least we put them on the program for 12 months, and then depending on how urgent, how quickly they need to gain these skills, then the intensity of the training will vary, right? If it's someone who knows, if we know that, for example, in 6 months we need to have 500 people ready, we can adjust that as we go. But at least they have these licenses, these premium licenses, that's what we call them, intensive licenses, to really help prepare them for any potential investors that might come into the country.
So let me get you straight. This is already fully funded.
It's fully funded by the MasterCard Foundation.
You're already doing this, no matter who ends up taking these people.
Yes, we are doing it. It's the same way in the tourism and hospitality industry that training that we're running. Initially, we were really focusing mostly on people who are already in service, but now we've included students who are studying tourism and hospitality, and also people who are unemployed but wish to work in this sector. So it's the same kind of philosophy that leads us to go to people who are about to graduate university who would like to work in this sector. But we feel like we will assess them, obviously. We feel like could benefit from more training in terms of English proficiency, and make sure that they also benefit from this program. Ultimately, the MasterCard Foundation program we are under is Hangahazaza, which is part of Young Africa Works. Ultimately, what they want to do is to help young people find dignified work. These skills that we are giving them are transferable. If they do not end up in the GPS sector with a BPO company, they will end up somewhere else where these skills will be of value to them. It will increase their chances of finding dignified work, right? Fulfilling and dignified work. So we are not so hell-bent on the fact that we wish for these young people to be available for the investors, but if they end up going somewhere else, still they would have, that's something that they're going to have with them for the rest of their lives. So,
well, the way we're looking at it is we've got a bunch of companies lined up that are interested in finding talent, right? So I don't think you'll have a problem there.
Exactly.
Like the demand is there. So if we bring in a new BPO, a new business process outsourcing company tomorrow, would it be would they be able to communicate with you during those 12 months and check in with you? So we have this catchphrase, demand-driven skilling, right?
Yes.
So that we don't skill people past the private sector, but we skill them at what it is that the private sector actually wants, not what we think they want, right?
Yeah.
Is there the interaction? Can you allude to that a little bit? How?
Absolutely. So depending on the program that we're running, and depending on who the client is, if I may call it client, we're able to really track every single thing. We're able to set different targets, right? If we're, for example, the client says, I need every single person in this program, and if every single potential candidate to be at a B2, then we adjust accordingly. When you say we adjust accordingly, it means we adjust the time they need to spend every week on the program to be able to meet that target. And that is something that we do track on a daily basis. You know, we have a very, very thorough reporting system that uses, that tracks millions and millions of data points every single minute. So if the person, the client wants to track the progress of every single person, wants to track that we are actually moving in the right direction, we're able to review that at whatever frequency they require.
So one of your metrics, I assume, is how many people actually get placed, right? So if you're calling them the client, but it's actually a free product from their perspective,
yes,
right? They get to, it's kind of almost too good to be true. They don't have to pay for it, but they get to tell you what they want their future employees to have if they come on time within this 12-month period. You will be open to getting their input and also having them check how well these students are doing.
100%. And then we get to go to whatever alumni group or student school and say, these are the potential jobs that are coming into the country. This is the level that you're required to be at. If you want to be part of this pool of potential employees, this is how much you're going to have to work. But still, for them, it's free. And what happens is that we because we can track their progress in real time, we're able to weed out those who are not even showing enough motivation and say, if you're not progressing at this rate, then you're going to have to be removed from the program, and bring in people who really want that upskilling opportunity. So
it's this nice mix in Rwanda that exists between philanthropic money, right? That's and a strong government that's interested in private sector led development.
Yes.
And so that this money gets funneled into what companies actually need instead of being skeptical of companies. But if you want to come and invest and if you want to export from here, we're going to provide like Joseph said, a soft landing. Right?
Yes. I think the good thing is we have a government that is not afraid of looking at what the realities are on the market. We are not trying to pretend that we have all this figured out. Yes, we are a country that is on the rise, but if we're on the rise, it means we're starting from somewhere that is not, very high. And able to say, okay, this is what we're lacking, and how do we get to that level? And sometimes, often you have partners who want to support that, basically fill that gap. And that's what happened with the MasterCard Foundation when they came in a few years back. They really sit down, I believe, with the government to look at what sectors are priority, and then find partners. They could be private sector or NGOs who will help as well bridge that gap, right? So I think the way that most of these programs work are often in a tripartite situation, where you have development partners such as the MasterCard Foundation, and then you have the government really setting the vision and the targets, and then someone who will come in to implement, like EF does here. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yes.
You personally, how did you get into this work?
I got into this work, it was a little bit by accident, if I may, because I was on maternity leave actually for the first time, and I was living in Canada at the time, so I came to Rwanda and was looking to stay, because I'm from here. And then I really wanted to do work that was meaningful. And when I saw this program and I understood that you're doing mass, like large-scale training for the government in terms of English proficiency, I wanted to be part of it because I see the opportunities that speaking a foreign language has opened for me. And I believe that everyone should have the same opportunity because, again, there's a saying that says the limit of your language is the limits of your word, right? And if I know the vision, I know where we want to be as a country, and it will require for us to kind of like open up our horizons and get inspiration or get ideas or get even basically we have to be inspired by what's happening around us, right? We can't continue being, not even continue. We need skills that will allow our young people to really take advantage of everything that the world has to offer. And most of the time, if you don't speak English, you can't do that. If you want to do research, 95% I think of publications are in English. Every single thing that, like, it can block you on so many different levels. And so at first, when I saw this opportunity, I thought, well, it was going to be mostly about teacher training. And that is something that is in the works, that is upcoming. And going through the interview process, I realized that there was so much room for growth and opportunity in terms of language training in this country and across the region, across the continent as well, that anyone, I think, in my shoes would have jumped into this opportunity. If you want to do meaningful work, because at the end of the day, what you're giving people is skills. You're giving people a baggage that they will be able to carry for the rest of their lives. So it was a no-brainer. And when we were brought into the skills office, actually I think it was the investment office at the Rwanda Development Board, when they heard of the work we were doing in tourism and hospitality, they called us and they let us to find out, is your training adaptable to different sectors?
Well, investment office, that's
exactly.
The one where
that's
Tim
the one,
worked.
Exactly. So team brought us and said,
and that's the idea of
can you train people for this sector?
Yeah.
And we were like, not only we can, but we've done this before.
Yeah, so to give you the counterpart of that story from the other side, we came and saw that the GB Global Business Services sector, we have all these acronyms, right?
Yes.
Global Business Services, business process outsourcing, think of call centers, contact centers, all the way up to software development, whatever companies can outsource, right? Back office, front office.
Yes.
That sector, in the pandemic, it all of a sudden, maybe earlier, people were worried that sector was going to get automated, as people were worried about many other sectors.
Yes.
But during the pandemic, it really showed that, to the contrary, the sector is really growing.
Yes.
So many services are moving online, and through the pandemic also, it's like amplified that. And these companies are looking for new locations, and coming to Africa. Anybody who looks at demographics can see that that's probably where you want to be in the next 20 years.
Yes.
So in terms of the labor force. So how do you feel about you're in 122 countries, different African countries. We have a measurement problem, right?
Yes.
Like the companies always ask us, when we're supposed to give the pros and cons of different locations, different geographies, they always ask us, okay, how many B2 level English speakers do you have? And we always come back and say, well, it's difficult. And they say, no, we don't want to hear that. We want to get a number, right? And then you're tempted to just give them a guess, an estimate, right? But of course, we want to be accurate. And how do you feel? How do you guys go about that? Because I see some EF publications where you guys are working on that. How do you measure the numbers of B2 level English speakers that are available in a certain geography and compared to other geographies?
So simply by assessment.
You just go on the ground, roll up your sleeves.
Yes. So no, we have one of the most extensive English assessment tests called the EF set that is free for any user in the world. And 2 million people take that test every year.
Okay, 2 million people take your test every year.
Yes. So you see how simple it is for us to have that data.
And
because
you know where they are.
we know exactly where they are.
Yeah.
Yes, we know
and
exactly
then you
where they are.
extrapolate onto the entire population.
Exactly,
kind of.
exactly. Yeah, so that's how we're able to publish the EPI, which is our index publication that we make every year. And often we find it very accurate.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Interesting. It's a bit like you're the Google for languages. Huh?
We are the Google for languages, exactly. Yeah, and then so that gives us like an overview. But then once we're on the ground, we really want to have an accurate picture of what the proficiency situation is. And what we do is we go on the ground and we assess people. So, for example, we did an assessment for the teachers, for the Ministry of Education and the Rwanda Education Board, Rwanda Basic Education Board, where we assessed 55,000 teachers.
55,000,
to know, yes,
okay.
to know where they currently are, so that the government can have a clear picture of how large is the gap, and then decide on how to fill up that gap.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. So if we are saying we want to know what level of proficiency Rwandan university graduates, for example, have when they get out of the university, what we would do, hypothetically, is contact the University of Rwanda and the different universities that are of interest to us, and then set up that assessment. It's 50 minutes, and it gives us a very clear image of what the situation is and how we need, whether or not we need to get to we need to improve this situation, and how we get there, and how much time it will take us. Yeah.
And it's interesting in the sense that if you are the ones providing this data, you don't have an incentive to make it look nicer than it is, because if it's not great, then you can step in. But you also don't have an incentive to make it look worse. I'm just kind of seeing like how legitimate this data is, because working in 122 countries, you can obviously. English isn't perfect anywhere.
Yes.
So you can jump in at any level.
Yes, absolutely.
Right. So it's an organization like yours providing this data. We can be pretty sure that you don't have an incentive, because I'm saying this because a lot of governments setting this data up themselves. Is a lot of times this idea, build it and they will come. Right. Advertise that it's maybe already a bit better than it is, and then companies will come, and then they will make it better, right? Once they're there. But for you guys, it's just like, no, you need to assess for yourself at which level you start. So that's really kind of gives some legitimacy to your database, right? Exactly.
Yeah, that's exactly that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, fascinating. So we had our conference in March.
Yes.
Since our conference, I know you weren't at it, but you were very closely involved.
Yes.
Since our conference, so we brought these global analysts from the global business services sector in, who don't know Africa very well, but know the sector very well. And some of them do know Africa, but just not really Rwanda that well. And since then, there's been some work on the ecosystem, and there's one company actually came in through the conference, CCI, set up now.
Oh,
and,
great.
Yeah, and so they're in the process of setting up. How do you feel working with we set up this WhatsApp group, which was kind of, we didn't then use, but different channels. We're trying to, just keep up with the demand for new locations, right? And we try to make this a location because it's got everything else. It's got the conference tourism, it's got all the high rankings.
Yeah.
And how do you feel since the conference has the ecosystem evolved in the GBS sector, or is that a bit too removed because you guys are mostly focusing on the English?
It's a bit too removed, but also after that conference, we only got approved for these 1,000 seats in July.
Okay.
Yes. It was after that when we were able to have this conversation with the skills office and the Rwanda Development Board and say, we have all these seats that were dedicated to tourism and hospitality, but here are some other priority sectors. And even for them, they're like, absolutely, we need to do some work in there. We don't want to go and invest into another large-scale training for potentially GBS. Why don't we pilot this with you? You train these 1,000 people, and depending on what success we have, then we can look at a larger program where we will be systematically, we can train a much bigger population to make sure that potential investors have a workforce that is ready to get started. So I think that's what I know in terms of what has changed on our side. Because when we came to the conference last time, to the conference of the different discussions that we had the desire to be part of this. We had a desire to train people for this industry, but we did not have anything tangible. But right now we have 1,000 seats that are signed off, and we're about to start sourcing. And this was one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, actually, because all these different companies have come in and they've hired all these different people. But we would like to know now that we have these 1,000 free seats, who do we give them to?
Right.
Yes.
Well, that's a nice problem to have.
Yeah, it's a nice problem to have, because we want to have, one thing that we want to avoid is people joining this program thinking that there is a guaranteed job at the end of the training. We don't know that, right? There's a lot of things that are going to have to come into contact, into play, and we need young people to understand that. Because what we've seen often when we're working with students is they don't always grasp the magnitude of the opportunity that is given to them when it comes to training, because for them it's just an additional, more work, right? And they need to see tangible results at the end. So we want to know, we want to work with the different stakeholders in the ecosystem to make sure that we are targeting the right people, and that basically everyone in this relationship comes out. It's a win-win situation for everybody, basically.
Right.
Yeah, so this is why we didn't want to go out and start sourcing on our own. We wanted to talk to you, we wanted to talk to Harambe, we wanted to talk to, I believe there is a company called ITM that has done some sourcing for the GP, for some recruitment for the sector. So we just wanted to talk to you first so you can give us a better picture. And then on Wednesday we're speaking to Sandra at the investment office.
RDB.
At the RDB. Then we can start sourcing, because ideally we would want to source all these people by the end of the year, so that they can start training and they have 12 months.
Perfect.
But again, we will need to also understand what level you want them to be at. Do we want to add a component of accent reduction? There's so much information that we need that we don't necessarily have, because we don't know what feedback we are getting from the investors, right, from the companies. Yeah.
Right. So we have kind of two different types of companies. We have the companies that are already here, and the companies that are interested.
Yes.
So me, full disclosure, I also currently we work for a company that, with my consultancy, that is looking for, we're sourcing 10 different African markets in sense of pros and cons, right?
Yes.
So this is a big pro, right? I can go and say, well, we have these, 1,000 trainees that if you just pick them up if you like, if you fit the criteria, which they do. And then we have the companies that are already here. We can, in Soros Towers, there's Gary Bennett of Tech Experts. We can go over there, and he's scaling up, and he has his metrics, and he's trying hard to scale up his. They are currently at 200 people. Okay. They were, recently at, from 50 to 70 to 200.
Yes.
And there's CCI. Yes. That is, that's Victor Zen, who is currently he's in Ethiopia right now, but he's responsible for Ethiopia and Rwanda. Yes. And they've scaled up in Kenya pretty fast. Within a year and a half, they had 3,000 people. Okay. 2,500 on their course to 3,000 people. So in Kenya, it's working really well for CCI. And it's just emblematic of the sector, how fast this sector is growing. Yeah. And that's the company CCI. Tech Experts works at the higher end of the services in terms of pay also, and in terms of the client. Yeah. CCI is looking at a few different things. They're coming in and they're saying, okay, well, we don't know yet what we can do here, what's going to work in Rwanda, what Rwandans can do. Yes. So we're going to try a few different contracts and see what happens here. So they are really just in the stage of setting up. Yes. So speaking with them, and CCI is really the company that other companies are going to watch,
Yes.
whether or not it works, right?
Yes.
And this is just a bit of history, like, throughout the 2000s and 2000, really starting in 2009, 10, the sector in South Africa and in Egypt really took off and grew into the hundreds of thousands, like so 200, 300,000 in South Africa and maybe 200,000 roughly so CCI is really the company that other global business services companies are watching, whether or not this works in Rwanda. If it does, others will follow suit. They're always looking for this Goldilocks zone where it's not overcrowded. That's what a lot of them are people in the Philippines will tell you that we've got lots of space and lots of workers and lots of management, but attrition plays a role, and so they're looking for new locations.
Okay.
And they found in around 2010 Morocco, Egypt, South Africa were the places that took off. Anything in between, not so much. And now it's really Ghana, Kenya, and hopefully Rwanda with these two companies here.
Without coming, okay. I have a question. If you've been exchanging with the companies that are already on the ground, what kind of feedback do you have from them? What has been their experience so far? Do you know?
Well, with what? With language skills?
Yeah, with the experience. Obviously, not the policy side of things or the taxation side of things, the business side of things. No, I'm talking about in terms of human capital.
Right.
What do they have to say after working here for a year or 2 years?
Right.
Yeah.
So keep in mind that they also have their metrics to fill. They
Yes.
have the promise to keep. So I think the feedback is positive, but of course it's not something that's coming by itself.
Yes.
It's not, scaling up. How many of your trainees can you actually then put in seats to take calls, right? What percentage? Is that 30% or is that 60%, right? You would like it to be 60%, you would like it to be 70%, but sometimes it's 30%.
Yes.
So now how can we improve that? The skills gap, the human capital, to put it the other way around, if you look at a place like Nigeria, many people, place like Kenya, really good human capital, you don't really know how to do business there, right?
Yes.
It's harder to do business, right? So Rwanda has the opposite. Small place, everybody speaks Kinyarwanda, right? No need to communicate in English, right? And getting that's really the bottleneck, right?
Yeah.
If in Rwanda, if we can show the investors that Rwanda has the people with the skills, they're here.
Yes.
That's because everything else works. All the other boxes are ticked.
Yes.
Right. So the feedback of the ones that are here already, they're in a sprint. They're working really hard right now to make it happen.
Yes.
So I'm stuttering a bit because I'm reluctant. Their feedback isn't negative.
Yes.
Their feedback also isn't. They're not jubilant in the sense that they're saying the technical skills are good. There's a huge ecosystem here
Yes.
for this small place. Like this tech hub, regional tech hub idea is really taking root in terms of with Carnegie Mellon University campus here and other universities and the whole IT centers in this place, Norskin, setting up. On the soft skills side, there's some work to be done. Yeah, that was to be expected. I don't think I can't give you a clear answer, but work is to be done. But it's not. I haven't. None of them have told me, listen, Elvis, we made a mistake coming here. I haven't heard that yet.
Okay.
And that's good, I think,
Yes.
because every new market that you enter into is going to be difficult, of course.
There's had to be some sort of bottlenecks, as you said. Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good to know because that's what we expected as well. That's what we expected would be the main issue. And would like to be able to kind of work with the industry to see things shift a little bit. Not a little bit, actually, shift for the better. Yeah.
There are other companies that are here. Deriv is here. It's more financial services. There's one setting up. It's a few setting up, so I don't want to don't know how far they are.
Yeah.
But the main ones, global business services, are CCI and tech experts.
Okay.
There's a German company, Schnell Media, is here doing image annotation, but that's not languages. Right?
Okay.
They're doing back office work, right?
Okay.
Non-voice. So, and then there's a VIPP Intersys, but they're doing exclusively French.
I think even people who are in back office work can still benefit from this kind of training because they need to be able to communicate with the rest of their team.
Sure. I'm just looking at the lowest hanging fruit.
Yes.
Where are the biggest fruit on the lowest branches?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking front office, service, because that's the one question we keep being asked.
Yes.
How many B2 level English speaking Rwandans can you deliver per month, per year?
Okay.
What does the ecosystem give? And if we can up that number, that's the bottleneck.
Okay.
So that's why I really say, I'm not saying this to everybody,
Yes.
but you're really a cornerstone of this ecosystem. If your bottleneck is opened up,
Yes.
it's really exciting.
Yeah. And at first, when we wanted to get in here, into this system, into this sector, our main challenge was going to be financing, right? And now that the Skills Office has decided to pilot this under the current agreement that we have, we are feeling really, really hopeful that we'll see some results for sure. Yeah.
That's the thing also that I feel that people like us can be in between the private sector. These global business service companies haven't really traditionally worked with donors because think about it, they work in 100 countries.
Yes.
A lot of them aren't developing countries, right? They work from Germany to
Yes.
And so it's quite unique to be working this closely with international development aid money that's interested in creating jobs.
Yes.
Right? It's because also it's such a young continent, right? So because the demographics are so many young people. So to help those companies understand where they can, I can assume some of the companies that will watch this will be quite surprising for them to hear what you've told us about what you have to offer.
Yes. I think ultimately what our country, our government wants to do, in my opinion, is to make sure really that Rwanda is a fertile ground for anyone coming with this kind of investment, anyone who's coming to offer job opportunities to our young people, anyone who's coming with plans to do business here. And if the bottleneck is in human capital, then we need to find a way to address that. We understand that it's on us to have a workforce that is ready for investors and not for the investors to come and then also have to train people on things that they should have been trained in, right?
Well, the good thing is, the thing that I like, what you're saying, I think is also this mix, like being, not have the training first and then have the investor come.
Yes.
But have the investor know that when they come, the training is going to be on its way and they can hit the ground running.
Yes.
And be actively part of the training,
Yes.
right? They have these closely associated, they have, for example, CCI works closely with CareerBox,
Okay.
right? Tech Experts works closely with Elevate, right? Then we've had Joseph from Solve IT and Harambe in the ecosystem.
Yes.
All of this is, in some sense, you guys might be competing, but in most senses, you'll all be collaborating because there's so much white space on this map, right? It's not like you're fighting for territory.
Yes.
It's because the more you can produce, the demand is, I don't want to say infinite, but there's large demand by global business services companies to come into. I'll give you one, I keep using this example. In 2019, I started working with Digital Skills Accelerator Africa, and then one of the founding companies is Majorel, a German company. In 2019, they had 29,000 FTE. Now they've got 75,000.
Okay. Wow.
Right? It's one of the faster growing ones, but the sector is growing. Like the other day, I was on a third quarter earnings call with another company that we're currently working with, and they have in the third quarter they had 16% growth. and 9% organic. So it's really a super interesting time. I mean, we've had this before where the hype came around, like in the 2000s when, everybody came around and said BPO is the next. I mean, you remember back then and then the financial crisis came and kind of shut everything down.
Yes.
But now this really might be it. I mean, that this kind of services highway, the internet becoming the highway that connects the world. Right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, and to go back to the ecosystem, to us, really, the secret sauce is in the collaboration, is collaboration, because even with Harambee, we do different things, but for the same purpose, right? Because we are already part of the same upskilling ecosystem in the tourism hospitality industry. Harambee is also part of the Hanga Hazaza project to the MasterCard Foundation. So these are people that they will train people and then transfer them to us, and we'll give them more training depending on what their interests lie, what the demand is, what their gaps are. So we can't do everything, I think we all have our different areas of expertise, and really the different companies that are around, what we want to do is basically provide our support, Yeah, that's really that. And again, the most meetings that we've had about this conversation was with Harambee, because Harambee also does language training in a different manner, and we believe both our programs could complement each other to ensure that these young candidates have a more thorough skill set. Yeah.
And I mean, we wrote this study. That's the basis for the conference we did in March.
Yes.
And our main policy recommendation is that the ecosystem needs to be able to ramp up.
Yes.
Like we've asked a few. We did a small survey of a few experts, global experts in the global business services industry. And really, we asked them if Rwanda has the supply of labor, if Rwanda can supply, how many FTEs could be here in terms of demand, right? What's the pure demand, right? People a lot of times misunderstand what we were saying there. And they said between 50 and 100,000, right, for the next 10 years. Some of them may have even been conservative in the sense that they look at Kigali and say, what can it actually supply? We were actually asking if you can supply it. Obviously, it's going to be tough in 10 years to have 100,000 people here working in that sector.
Yes.
That's, but if you could pull that off, that's the demand for it, right? And I can't see why they would, exaggerate that figure. It's just what they're seeing, like they're looking for locations.
Yeah.
So I really see that you've got your hands full in scaling up quick. So there's not going to be, you're not going to be scrambling for clients. It's not going to be, stealing each other's clients. It's going to be more like, how can we grow this quickly together? Together,
exactly. Exactly.
Right. You had more questions for me, or should we?
Well, it was mostly questions about, because I remember you had said that the next conference was going to happen either in December or February or something like that.
Right. So I was hired by GIZ Global, and then there's a branch GIZ Local. I'm not sure. You met Ayan?
No.
Ayan Jama. We'll maybe see her these days too. So, so GIZ Global did the kind of the narrative, like the think piece, which is our study.
Yes.
I can't think of the English word.
Yeah.
The think push.
Yeah.
Like how to push it in the right direction. And we did it very hands-on, also working with Tim and with Matt on this study. And now GIZ Local is taking the baton from it, and also of course Harambee co-sponsored, then came on board to co-sponsor the conference. And we thought about doing another one, following up by November, which is now.
Yeah.
But we're kind of looking at what really happened, to be honest, hands-on, was the analyst told us, concentrate on your case studies that you have and that you can immediately get. and that's everything else is going to follow.
Okay.
So instead of focusing on spreading like a spray can, like spreading wide by another conference and bringing in all kinds of people,
Yeah.
some of whom might just come for the trip and some of whom might come for... Concentrate on the ones that are really interested in coming here.
Yes.
So the first one was CCI.
Yeah.
Bring CCI in, and that's what we're still hearing.
Yes.
If CCI works, you don't need another conference.
Yes.
Because then
Everyone will,
more companies will come. You'll
Okay.
have 3, 4, 5 more companies coming. So that's the first kind of entry point.
Yes.
That's what we concentrated on, and that has like they're here, they're setting up, and so following up with another conference.
Yeah.
It's not my direct mandate anymore, but Tim is now working together with CCI, GIZ
Locally? Okay.
That's just starting. So, and of course Tim works with me, so we're in close contact.
Okay.
That is something that may or may not come, but from a different budget. That
Yes.
budget that we use there, we're not going to do another conference.
Okay. Okay. Because what we also were planning on having a meeting, informal, with the different organizations that have already come here. So I'm going to guess it's Tech Expert and maybe CCI, who's in the process of coming here, just to understand exactly what the actual needs are. Because the way that our training works is, yes, we provide like foundational like English proficiency, but we can also add on to that. And we have a wide array of industry English and business English that is mandatory but is available on the program for learners to take if they wish to. But we can also make sure that everyone who comes into the program for this specific purpose has now all these different additional courses that they must take, and they are mandatory to them. But for that, we need to understand exactly what kind of skills are required. We need to understand as well what kind of training do you want these people to undergo. If someone is at a B1 level, do you want them at a B2, or do you want them at a B2 of the current, of their way to express themselves? Or do you want us to also work on their accent reduction? Do you want us to also work on this and that? We have a lot of questions that will help us basically set relevant targets for every single person that comes into the program. Yeah. So that's why we always have these questions like, who's here? Who's been here? What do you want? What do you feel like is still lacking? And by the way, if you have employees who you are already people who are already employing, but you feel like would benefit from additional training, guess what? They can also come in and be part of the 1,000. So we have specific, I think basically what I'm asking here is we would like to be in touch with the different institutions and then see how we can provide them more help, see how we can make sure that really they're getting the best, they're getting what they want.
Yeah, that's demand-driven training, right?
Yes, exactly.
Right, yeah, that's wonderful.
So we don't want to do something that's generic. We really want to make sure that we tailor the training to the different institutions. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's set that up. Let's meet with these people.
Yeah.
I mean,
I know you're leaving soon, but
we can surprise Gary right now. We can walk down to his office and see if he's there.
we can do that, or we can ask him when he's there. So when we go, he has time for us, and then we can sit down with them and have a chat and to see. Then I can also come with a little bit of a presentation of the different components of our training, so that we can know, like, pinpoint to what we want people to really focus on. Because it's easy to get distracted because there's so much content, and there's content in there. Content that we've developed for tourism and hospitality specifically, that these people are not going to need, But what do they need? And is it on the program so that we can make sure that they go through it? Yeah.
Exciting times.
Exciting times,
right.
Absolutely.
Really?
Yeah.
Oriane, thanks for doing this.
You're welcome, Elvis. It was a pleasure. But yeah, if you have any other ideas that you or any other contacts or people that you would like for us to talk to, or some tips or anything, guidance for us, we really welcome, because we want to make sure that these 1,000 seats that we have are used productively, you know?
The main ones, again, are CCI and tech experts, and maybe some might still come.
Yes.
But I have a feeling those 1,000 seats are going to be gone soon by the ones that are here. So I don't want to, spread the word too widely.
Yes.
We're taping it, so, but by the time this airs, I have a feeling those 1,000 seats are going to
be gone. Yeah.
Will be, there'll be some takers for them.
Yeah.
So and yeah, those are good companies to work with.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we hope, because it's a new sector, right? So it's going to also take some, not convincing, but educating these potential employees, to bring them into that sector. So all we need to do is make sure that we really align in terms of communications. When we talk to them, we are talking for the potential investors.
And one thing that I wanted to say earlier was that the incentives also matter for these trainees, right? So if you take them at the beginning of their training to Tech Expert's office and show them around, this could be your workplace.
Yes.
If you manage this training well, you can be sitting here in however many months.
Yes.
It's different than saying, okay, once you're finished here, you're going to get this certificate that you can hang on your wall.
Yes, exactly.
Or make a paper plane out of.
Yes. What we can do as well, that's why we also want to meet with Tech Expert and them, because we want to be able to go talk to some of the employees, film a little bit of a video that we will share now in our sourcing process when people are sharing their experience of working in this industry, talking to potential, to recruiters that have been working with Tech Expert, and who can talk about what they're looking for and what's in it for the trainee, because no one wants to undergo a 12-month training for nothing.
Right.
Especially one that will probably require more than 2-3 hours of work every single week.
Can they do the 12-month program, and at the same time, as you said, even current employees of Tech Experts, if they need language upskilling, that could be part of it. So they can also start working earlier.
Yes.
So if, say, CCI comes in and says, okay, we want people in 1 month, can you do a 1-month intensive training, also maybe with Harambe?
Yes.
And then as of the second month, they're already working.
Yes, and they continue.
Right, and as they're working, we're going to see what we need to
we can do that. All we need to know is what the outcome has to be, and then we can adjust. We can say, you need to be at this level, you have this much time, so this is how much work you need to put in for the first 3 months or forever, whatever, As long as you have clear targets, it's very easy for us to translate those targets into deliverables, basically, for the learners. Yeah.
So interesting, because usually what we have is co-financed. Already co-financed is great, because you don't have to pay all of it, but yours is fully financed.
It's fully financed because it's a pilot that we're trying out.
Yeah.
And again, because the government understands that it has to have a little bit of skin in the game in making sure that the investors we're trying to attract find fertile ground on all aspects, on all fronts, including human capital.
Right.
So, it was a no-brainer. For the skills office, this was something that had to happen. Yeah.
All right. In your experience, from where to where could you get somebody in Rwanda in that time frame? From which level to which level?
In 12 months?
Yeah.
It all depends on how much time, how much work they're putting in every single week, right?
But if you're looking at a bell curve of students, some working really hard, some not working so hard, where would you think of the 1,000 you would put? Where could you bring 500 of the 1,000 after the 12 months?
If you're looking at university graduates, right? And what we're thinking was we're going to go into different campus departments, but mostly business studies. That's where we're thinking of going. Where I could make, I don't know, I don't have the assessment, but I'm going to assume that at the very least they're going to be at a B1.
Yeah.
In 12 months, realistically, we could get them anywhere from a B2 to a C1. Yeah.
Between B2 and C1.
But again,
so upper level B2.
This is with a non-intensive training, because we've had people who've gone from A1 to C2, but putting in 3-4 hours every day for 1 year, right? So all of that is achievable. It all depends on really learners' self-motivation.
So this pilot is, what did you say, 2-3 hours?
So what we do right now, what we've been doing in tourism and hospitality, because the levels are so different, we did not ask them to reach at a B1 or B2. We said, we want you to improve by 1 CFR level in 12 months. And that takes them 2.5 hours a week. But that's not a big goal, right? And again, this is again people who are already in employment, where we understand that they have limited time. Someone else who understands what's in it for them would be able to put in 2 hours a day, 10 hours a week or something like that.
What's interesting about an organization like yours that's so big as yours is that you have so many benchmarks to compare it with.
Yes.
And you can pretty clearly say what the outcome will probably be.
Yes.
Like you're not guessing. You're not a startup
that's
guessing, well, we can probably, you're not,
Yeah.
You can pretty much, a company like that can pretty much plan, even though the pool isn't there, it's going to be there, depending on what you put in. That's what you say.
Yes.
You're going to put in 2 hours a week, or you're going to put on 3 hours a day. We can provide that whole spectrum.
Yes.
If you do this, this is what you're going to have at the end.
Yes.
And if you're going to be ready to absorb them, which they will be,
Yes.
then that's going to be there.
That's
So
gonna
you can provide that with pretty high accuracy, that estimate of what you can actually, what they're going to get in what time frame with what input, right?
And depending on the line of work that they're going into, we can also recommend, to learners. Our school has 2 aspects. There's a self-study component where obviously you get to exercise your 4 skills: your speaking, writing, listening, and reading. And that is great. It can get you to whatever level you need to be. But what we would really work on is building confidence. And that is mostly done through participating in conversation classes. For jobs like the ones we're talking about right now, we are going to really push students to participate in these conversation classes, because that's what gives you the confidence to express yourself in English. Because most of the time you find that the proficiency is there, but it's the confidence and just the ease that is not there. And that is one thing that we will probably push a lot with this specific target. Yeah, specific group, sorry.
And there's a pilot of 1,000 people, and then a pilot for what? Like, what are people talking about?
We want to see, first of all, we want to see that it's going to work, right?
If it does, say it
works. If it works, then we go back to drawing table. We go back to maybe we start looking into a co-financing relationship with the investors, or I don't know. We haven't really. Right now, we're really focusing on making sure that we have a proof of concept.
Yeah.
That we can say, give us this, a group of people, give us this much time, and we'll get them to where they want to be, right? Because after that, we can even go back to the current partners that we have, working with in tourism. Yeah, probably go back to them and say, look, this has worked. It has yielded these results. This is how many people have found employment with this training. Now there's demand for more. What do we do, right? Are you in so that we can kind of like do this again with 10,000 people, 20,000 people in CTC?
That's those kind of numbers. That's what I wanted to hear.
Yes, eventually.
We're not looking at from 1,000 to 2,000.
Yes.
We're looking at...
Yes, at larger numbers, yeah.
Right.
Ultimately, though, the goal is that we will be able to have university graduates who don't need to undergo additional training to be able to do this work.
Sure,
yes.
But I being in Germany, I like this, dual model, the apprenticeship model.
Yes.
Of not just having a university degree first. I think that's the way the world is also moving.
Yes.
Maybe that's wishful thinking, but not just being in the university for 4 years or longer, and then looking on the job market, but kind of at the same time
building the skills.
Building the practical skills that you're going to need to actually make money, and that's the incentive, right? We need young people to be able to make money.
Yeah, to find work.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. All right, Oriane, thanks so much for doing
You're
this.
welcome. Thank you, Elvis.